The crystal glass shattered against marble, not dropped, thrown. Every conversation in Rousseau stopped. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward table 7, where a man in a $6,000 suit stood trembling with rage, and a young woman in a simple black uniform stood perfectly still, her face composed, her hands steady at her sides. This was the moment everything changed. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 47 minutes. Charlotte Hayes had worked at Rousseau for 3 years. The restaurant sat on the shores of Lake Michigan in Chicago's Gold Coast, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the water, white tablecloths catching afternoon sunlight, and a Michelin star that drew the city's elite like moths to flame. She was good at her job, better than good. At 31, she moved through the dining room with practiced grace, anticipating needs before guests voiced them, remembering preferences, making each table feel like the only one that mattered. She'd memorized the wine list. She knew which regulars liked their water with lemon, which wanted ice on the side, which preferred to be left alone until they signaled. She was saving for grad school. Business administration, 18 months away if tips stayed consistent. Today had started like any other Thursday. Lunch service, moderate crowd, predictable rhythm. Charlotte had 5 tables in her section. 4 were easy. A pair of lawyers celebrating a closed deal. An elderly couple marking their anniversary. A tech CEO she'd served a dozen times before, and a food critic she recognized but pretended not to. Then table 7 walked in. Ryan Blackwell. She recognized him from business magazines. 39 years old. Self-made, they said. Though self-made was generous when you started with a trust fund and Ivy League connections. He'd turned his family's modest real estate holdings into a billion-dollar empire through aggressive acquisition and ruthless negotiation. Forbes called him a visionary. His employees called him demanding. The tabloids called him Chicago's most eligible bachelor. Though eligible seemed questionable given the string of broken engagements and carefully worded settlement agreements. He arrived alone. No reservation. Demanded a window table despite the lunch rush. Charlotte's manager, Marcus, who'd worked in hospitality for 20 years and rarely showed stress, actually hesitated before approaching her. Charlotte, table 7, I know it's a lot, but I've got it, she'd said simply. She approached with her usual professionalism, smiled, introduced herself, handed him the menu and wine list, asked if he wanted still or sparkling water. He didn't look up. Sparkling, San Pellegrino. Room temperature, and I'll have the Dover sole, but tell chef I want it prepared differently than the menu description. Poached, not grilled. Sauce on the side. Asparagus instead of the seasonal vegetables, but only the tips. Nothing tough. And make sure it's not overdone. Last time I had fish here, it was criminally dry. Charlotte maintained her smile. Of course. And for wine? The Chassagne Montrachet. The 2019, not whatever cheap vintage you're trying to move. We only carry the 2019 in that label, she replied evenly. Would you like to start with the wine now or? Obviously now. What kind of question is that? She wrote everything down, didn't react, turned to place the order, and Charlotte? His voice stopped her. He'd remembered her name. That should have been a good sign. Don't hover. I'll signal when I need something. I can't stand servers who interrupt every 5 minutes pretending to care about my experience. She nodded once. Understood. In the kitchen, she relayed the modifications to Chef Antoine, who raised an eyebrow but nodded. She retrieved the wine from the cellar, checked the temperature, brought it to the table with a clean glass. Ryan was on his phone, didn't acknowledge her as she presented the bottle, opened it with practiced efficiency, poured a taste. He sipped without looking, waved his hand dismissively. Fine, she poured. Left the bottle, retreated. 20 minutes later, she brought his meal. The sole was perfect, chef's craftsmanship evident in every detail. She set it down carefully, mentioned that the sauce was on the side as requested, and began to step back. That's when his voice cut across the dining room. This is unacceptable. Charlotte stopped mid-step. Every instinct told her to turn around, to address whatever concern he had with the same professional courtesy she'd shown all afternoon. But something in his tone made the room feel smaller. Is there a problem, sir? She asked, returning to table 7. Ryan didn't look at her. He was staring at the plate with the expression of someone who'd discovered an insult rather than a meal. This asparagus. I specifically said tips only. These, he gestured with his fork like a lawyer presenting evidence. These are full spears. Charlotte glanced down. The asparagus was trimmed perfectly. Tender tips exactly as he'd requested. Chef Antoine had been meticulous. Sir, those are the tips. The woody ends have been removed and don't tell me what I'm looking at. His voice rose slightly. Not quite shouting, not yet, but loud enough that nearby tables paused their conversations. I can see them. They're not tips. They're full spears. Do you think I don't know the difference? She kept her tone measured, calm. I apologize for any confusion. Would you like me to have Chef prepare a different portion? What I'd like, Ryan set down his fork with deliberate precision, is for someone competent to take my order. Clearly that's not you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Charlotte felt the stares, felt the weight of 50 people watching this interaction unfold, felt her pulse quicken, not from fear, but from the familiar anger that came with being diminished for doing your job well. But she didn't let it show. I understand you're disappointed, she said quietly. Let me speak with the manager and, I'll be speaking with the manager myself, Ryan interrupted. But first, let's address the larger issue here. This entire experience has been mediocre at best. The service is slow. The wine took forever, and now He waved at the plate again. Disaster. Charlotte felt something shift inside her, not breaking, settling. She dealt with difficult customers before. Everyone in hospitality had. You learn to absorb the complaints, to deflect the insults, to smile through the condescension, because that's what the job required. You didn't take it personally. You certainly didn't fight back, but there was something different about Ryan Blackwell. It wasn't just that he was rude. Rude customers were common. It was the casual cruelty in his eyes, the absolute certainty that his time, his standards, his experience mattered more than hers, that she existed only to serve him, and if she failed in even the smallest way, she deserved whatever humiliation followed. She'd seen that look before. From men who thought a uniform meant inferiority, from people who confused wealth with worth, and she was tired of it. I'll get the manager, she said simply. She turned, walked toward the kitchen with her head high, her steps measured. Behind her, she heard Ryan's voice again, not directed at her this time, but at his phone, loud enough for half the room to hear. Unbelievable. You'd think at these prices they could hire staff who understand basic instructions. In the kitchen, Marcus took one look at her face and sighed. That bad? He wants to speak with you. Something about the asparagus, Marcus nodded. He'd been in this industry long enough to know the type. I'll handle it. Take a breath. You're doing fine, but Charlotte didn't feel fine. She felt the familiar weight of swallowed words, of biting back responses, of making herself smaller so entitled men could feel bigger. She watched through the kitchen window as Marcus approached table 7, watched him listen with practiced patience as Ryan explained, in increasing volume, exactly how incompetent the service had been, how disappointed he was, how this reflected poorly on the restaurant's reputation. Marcus apologized, offered to comp the meal, promised to address the situation. Ryan waved him off. I don't want it comped. I want competent service. Is that really too much to ask? And then he said it. The words that would change everything, honestly. How do you people even stay in business when you hire waitresses who can't follow simple directions? The disdain in that word, waitresses, like it was something beneath consideration. Marcus maintained his composure, apologized again, retreated to the kitchen. Charlotte was already tying her apron tighter, already preparing to return to her other tables, to finish the shift with professionalism intact. But then she heard the crash. Ryan had knocked over his wine glass, not accidentally. Charlotte saw it the moment she rushed back into the dining room. The way the glass lay on its side, the burgundy liquid spreading across white linen in a deliberate pool. This wasn't clumsiness. This was theater. He stood beside the table, one hand raised in exasperation, his voice carrying across the entire restaurant. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She poured too close to the edge. Now look at this mess. Charlotte stopped 3 feet away. The wine hadn't been near the edge. She'd poured it perfectly. Years of practice made certain of that. And even if it had been poorly positioned, he'd been sitting there for 20 minutes. He'd knocked it over himself. Every person in Rousseau was watching now. The elderly couple, the lawyers, the food critic, all of them witnessing this manufactured crisis. Marcus appeared beside her, his jaw tight. "Mr. Blackwell, please, let's—" "No." Ryan's voice cut through the air like breaking ice. "I've been patient. I've been understanding. But this—" He gestured at the spreading wine, at Charlotte, at the general space around him, as though everything offended him equally. "This is completely unacceptable." He turned his attention directly to Charlotte. His eyes were cold, calculating. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The question hung there, heavy, loaded with expectation. Charlotte felt something crystallize inside her. She knew exactly who he was. "I'm Blackwell, billionaire, real estate mogul, a man accustomed to people rearranging themselves around his presence, his moods, his manufactured emergencies. But more than that." She knew what he represented. Every entitled customer who'd spoken down to her. Every man who'd assumed her uniform meant she was less intelligent, less valuable, less deserving of basic respect. She could apologize. She could offer to clean the wine, to bring a fresh bottle, to do whatever necessary to de-escalate the situation. That's what her training suggested. That's what 3 years of experience had taught her. But something in his expression, that absolute certainty that he would face no consequences, that his comfort mattered more than her dignity, made her decide differently. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I know who you are." Her voice was steady, calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something that made the air between them change. Ryan smiled, not warmly, triumphantly. "Good, then you understand why this level of service is completely—" "You're a man who knocks over his own wine glass and blames the waitress." Silence crashed over the restaurant like a wave. Ryan's expression froze. Confusion flickered across his features, followed quickly by anger. "Excuse me?" Charlotte didn't step back. Didn't lower her eyes. "You knocked over that glass yourself, sir. I watched you do it. And everyone else here did too." She could feel Marcus tense beside her, could sense the collective held breath of every customer, every staff member within earshot. This wasn't how these situations resolved. This wasn't how service industry professionals survived. But Charlotte was done surviving on someone else's terms. Ryan's face darkened. His voice dropped to something dangerous. "You're calling me a liar?" "I'm calling it what it is," she replied evenly. "You wanted a scene. You wanted an excuse to feel superior to someone. And you chose me because you thought a waitress wouldn't fight back." The words landed like stones in still water, creating ripples. Expanding outward, Ryan took a step closer. Close enough that she could see the rage building behind his eyes. Close enough that his next words, when they came, would be heard by everyone. "You have no idea what you've just done. I will have you fired. I will make sure you never work in this city again. Do you understand me? You're just a—" He stopped himself. But Charlotte knew what word had almost followed. She'd heard it implied in his tone all afternoon. Just a waitress. Just a server. Just someone whose value existed only in how well she accommodated his needs. Something dangerous flickered in her chest. Not recklessness, clarity. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a powerful man but a frightened boy who'd learned to mistake cruelty for strength, who'd been taught that money could buy deference, that volume could replace substance, that making others small would somehow make him larger, and she felt pity. "You know what your problem is?" Charlotte's voice was quiet now, steady. The entire restaurant leaned in to hear. Ryan's jaw clenched. "Enlighten me." She held his gaze. Let the moment stretch. Let the tension build until the silence itself became unbearable. And then she spoke. 10 words, clear, simple, devastating. "You have everything except a reason to deserve." The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. "You have everything except a reason to deserve it." And words. Simple, surgical, stripping away every defense he'd built, every justification he'd constructed for why he deserved to speak to people the way he did. The restaurant remained frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the ambient sounds, the subtle clink of silverware, the murmur of distant conversation, had vanished into the stunned silence. Charlotte stood perfectly still. Her face showed no triumph, no satisfaction, just quiet certainty. She'd said what needed saying, and whatever came next. She'd accept it. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it. His face cycled through expressions. Shock, rage, something that might have been shame before he buried it under fresh anger. "You," he started, his voice shaking. "You don't get to," but the words died, because something in Charlotte's eyes stopped him. Not defiance, not fear. Something worse. Pity. She pitied him. That realization landed harder than any insult could have, because pity meant she saw through him, saw past the suit, the reputation, the carefully constructed persona of success and power, saw something small and broken underneath. Marcus stepped forward, his voice careful. "Mr. Blackwell, perhaps we should—" "Don't." Ryan held up one hand. His eyes never left Charlotte's face. "Just don't." The moment stretched, expanded, became something neither of them had anticipated, and then Ryan did something no one expected. He sat down, not in anger, not in defiance. He simply sat, like someone who'd been standing too long and finally acknowledged the exhaustion. The restaurant seemed to exhale collectively. Conversation slowly resumed. Forks touched plates again. The world remembered how to move, but table 7 remained an island of stillness. Charlotte waited. She should walk away. Should let Marcus handle whatever came next. Should probably start clearing out her locker because there was no way this ended with her keeping her job. But she didn't move. Ryan stared at the spilled wine spreading across the tablecloth. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Quieter, almost lost. "My father used to say that I had everything but never earned any of it." Charlotte blinked. This wasn't the response she'd expected. "Sir, he died 2 years ago." Ryan's fingers traced the edge of the wine stain. "Never told me he was proud. Never said I'd done enough. Just reminded me that I'd started on third base and thought I'd hit a triple." The vulnerability in his voice felt wrong. Like watching someone remove armor they'd worn so long it had fused to their skin. Charlotte felt her anger waver. Not disappear, but complicate. "That doesn't excuse," she began. "No, it doesn't." Ryan looked up at her. Really looked. Not through her, not past her, but at her. "Nothing excuses how I spoke to you." "How I've spoken to?" "Probably dozens of people, hundreds." Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwell, we can discuss this in the office if—" "She should hit me." Everyone froze again. Ryan gestured vaguely at Charlotte. "Seriously? Knocked over wine, blamed you for it. Tried to get you fired for telling the truth. You should absolutely hit me." "I deserve it." "I'm not going to hit you," Charlotte said flatly. "Why not?" There was something almost desperate in the question, like he needed the punishment, needed some external consequence to match the internal collapse he was experiencing. "Because you're not worth losing my job over." The words were harsh, but her tone had softened slightly. "And because you're already hitting yourself harder than I ever could." Ryan flinched. Another direct hit. He stood slowly, reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet and withdrew several $100 bills. Set them on the table beside the spreading wine stain. "For the meal. For your time, for—" He gestured helplessly. Whatever this was. Charlotte didn't touch the money. "I don't want your cash." "Then what do you want?" The question hung between them. Genuine. Raw. Charlotte considered. She could say nothing. Could walk away and let this moment fade into another story about a terrible customer and a server who'd finally snapped. Could let Ryan Blackwell return to his life of insulated privilege and learned cruelty. But something in his expression stopped her. Some flicker of actual awareness. Like he'd been sleepwalking through his own life and her words had finally woken him up. "I want you to remember this feeling," she said quietly. "The next time you're about to treat someone like they're beneath you, I want you to remember how it felt to be seen." Ryan nodded slowly. His throat worked like he was swallowing something difficult. Then he turned and walked out of Rousseau, past the staring customers, past the staff, into the bright afternoon sunlight beyond the windows. And Charlotte stood there watching him go, wondering why her hands were shaking now that the confrontation was over. Marcus touched her shoulder gently. Charlotte. My office now, she nodded. Her legs felt strange, steady but somehow disconnected from the rest of her body. She followed him through the kitchen, past Chef Antoine, who gave her an unreadable look, past the prep cooks who suddenly found their cutting boards fascinating. The office was small, cramped. Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk but remained standing himself. Arms crossed, expression difficult to parse. That was, he started. Then stopped. Tried again. I've been in this business 23 years. I've seen a lot. But that, I know. Charlotte's voice was steady. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You should have done it years ago. She looked up sharply. Marcus was smiling. Not broadly, just a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth. The kind of smile that held complicated truths. Ryan Blackwell has been coming here for 18 months, he continued. Always alone. Always demanding. Always treating staff like obstacles instead of people. Last month he made Jessica cry. The month before he complained about Thomas so aggressively that corporate wanted him written up. Marcus shook his head. I've wanted to ban him. But corporate loves his money more than they love their employees. Charlotte felt something loosen in her chest. So I'm not fired. Fired? Marcus laughed, a short, surprised sound. Charlotte, you just did what every service worker dreams of doing. You told an entitled customer the truth, with witnesses. Half of them are probably posting about it online already. He wasn't wrong. Charlotte had noticed phones out during the confrontation. Saw the subtle movements of people angling for better video. In the age of viral content, moments like this didn't stay private. But corporate, she began, will see a viral video of their employee standing up to harassment. They'll spin it as empowerment, progressive workplace culture. They'll probably offer you a promotion. Marcus sat down finally. His expression grew serious. The question is, how are you? Charlotte considered. Her hands had stopped shaking. Her pulse had returned to normal. But something inside her felt different, rearranged. I don't know, she admitted. I've dealt with difficult customers before. But something about him, about the way he looked at me like I was nothing. You're not nothing, Marcus said firmly. You're one of the best servers I've ever worked with, smart, professional, kind even when people don't deserve it. He paused. What you did today took courage. Real courage. Not the shouting kind. The standing your ground kind. Charlotte felt unexpected tears threaten. She blinked them back. Thank you. Take the rest of the day off. Paid, go home, process, come back tomorrow ready to handle whatever fallout comes. She nodded, stood, started toward the door. Charlotte? Marcus's voice stopped her. For what it's worth, I think Ryan Blackwell needed to hear those words. Maybe more than anyone ever has. The lake was choppy when Charlotte reached the waterfront. Wind pulled at her jacket, sent waves crashing against the concrete barrier. She stood there, watching the city skyline reflect in restless water, trying to understand what had just happened. She'd confronted a billionaire in public with witnesses and somehow, she didn't regret it. Her phone buzzed. Text from her roommate, Jessica, the same Jessica who'd cried after Ryan's previous visit. OMG, you're already on TikTok. Waitress destroys billionaire with 10 words. 3 million views. You're famous, Charlotte closed the message. Didn't respond. She didn't feel famous. She felt tired and oddly hollow because beneath the adrenaline, beneath the satisfaction of finally speaking truth to entitled power, she'd seen something in Ryan's eyes, something broken, something that had responded to her words not with anger, but with recognition, like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to see through him, and that complicated everything. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, she almost didn't open it, but something made her thumb move across the screen. The message was simple. 3 sentences, you were right. About everything. I'm sorry, no signature. But Charlotte knew. She stared at those words for a long time, watched the waves, felt the wind, and wondered why someone she'd thoroughly humiliated was apologizing instead of threatening, wondered. What kind of man sent I'm sorry instead of you'll regret? This wondered why part of her as a small, unexpected part wanted to respond. She didn't. Not yet, but she saved the number, just in case. Across town, Ryan sat in his penthouse office overlooking the same lake. His phone lay on the desk before him. He'd drafted and deleted a dozen messages before sending those 3 sentences. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry, inadequate, insufficient, but honest. His assistant had shown him the video, watched him watch himself. The arrogance, the cruelty, the casual dismissal of another human being's dignity. Watched the moment Charlotte's words landed. Watched his face crack. 3 million people had witnessed his humiliation. And somehow, he was grateful for it. 3 days passed. The video spread. 5 million views. Then 8. News outlets picked it up. Waitress's viral takedown of entitled Billionaire. Corporate called. Not to fire her. To offer a promotion. Better pay. Benefits. Charlotte said she'd think about it, but thinking required space she didn't have. Everywhere she went, people recognized her. Strangers offered congratulations. Service workers thanked her. Someone bought her coffee and refused to let her pay. It felt strange, being celebrated for one moment while the rest of her life remained exactly the same. On Thursday, a week after the confrontation, Charlotte returned to work. The lunch shift was quiet. Marcus had removed table 7 from her section. Thoughtful but unnecessary. At 2:15, the hostess approached. Charlotte, there's someone asking for you specifically. He has a reservation. Table 7. Charlotte knew before she asked. Ryan Blackwell? The hostess nodded. Marcus appeared beside her. You don't have to. I can handle it. But Charlotte was already retying her apron. It's fine. I've got it. She walked into the dining room with her shoulders back. Ryan sat at table 7. Same window, same view. But everything else was different. He wasn't on his phone. Wasn't reading documents. He was just sitting, hands folded. Watching the lake, he looked tired. Not physically, emotionally, Charlotte approached. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Rousseau, Ryan looked up. Thank you for not refusing to serve me. I'm a professional. Are you ready to order? He smiled slightly, sad, self-aware. I deserve that. You deserve a lot of things, Mr. Blackwell, most less polite than professional courtesy. Ryan, he said quietly. Please, just Ryan. Charlotte studied him, searching for the arrogance she'd seen before. The cruelty, it wasn't there. Or if it was buried under something heavier. Something like genuine remorse. What are you doing here? She asked, having lunch and apologizing properly, not through a text message. You already apologized. I sent 3 sentences. That's not an apology. That's acknowledgement. Ryan gestured to the chair across from him. Will you sit, please? Just for a minute. Charlotte glanced around. The restaurant was nearly empty. Marcus was watching from the kitchen, ready to intervene if needed. Against her better judgment, she sat. Ryan seemed surprised. He opened his mouth, closed it. Tried again. I've thought about what you said every day since it happened. You were right. About everything. I have everything. Money, success, reputation. And I've done nothing to deserve any of it except be born into the right circumstances and be ruthless enough to protect them. Charlotte said nothing. Let him continue. My father built our first development with his own hands. He was a carpenter before he was a developer. He understood real work, the kind that leaves you exhausted and satisfied. Ryan's fingers traced the menu edge. I've never built anything. I just acquired, expanded, made money from money. And somewhere along the way, I started believing that made me better than people who actually create things. Who actually serve. So you came here to confess? Charlotte's tone wasn't cruel. Just tired. I came here to ask if you'd let me prove I'm capable of being better. Why would I care if you're better? The question hung between them. Sharp. Honest. Ryan met her eyes. Because you saw something in me worth pitying. And I'd like to find out if there's something worth respecting too. Charlotte leaned back, studied him. This man who'd humiliated her publicly, who'd apologized through text, who now sat before her asking for, what, redemption? Permission? You can't earn respect by asking for it, she said finally. I know, Ryan nodded, but I can earn it by changing. And I wanted you to know, I'm trying. Actually trying, not performing, not managing my image, just trying to be someone my father might have been proud of. Something in his voice made Charlotte pause, made her see past the billionaire sitting across from her to the man underneath, flawed, aware of it, desperate to be better, What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Ryan considered, then answered with surprising honesty. A chance to prove that moment wasn't the sum total of who I am. Charlotte looked at him for a long moment, silent, measuring. You think one conversation fixes what happened? Her voice was calm but firm. You think sitting here looking remorseful, asking for a chance, that's enough? No, Ryan's answer was immediate. I don't think anything I say today will fix it. But I'm hoping it's a start. A start to what? He hesitated. This was the question that mattered. The one that would reveal whether this was genuine change or elaborate performance. A start to becoming someone better, he said finally. Not for optics. Not for reputation management, for myself, and maybe for people like you who deserve better than what I've been. Charlotte stood. I need to get back to work. Ryan's face fell slightly, but he nodded. Of course. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Order something, she interrupted. If you're going to take up a table during lunch service, order something. Otherwise, you're just wasting everyone's time. A small smile flickered across his face. The Dover sole, grilled however chef recommends, and whatever wine pairs best. I trust your judgment, Charlotte raised an eyebrow. You trust my judgment? I'm learning too. He paused. And Charlotte? No modifications. No special requests, just whatever's good. She nodded once. Turned toward the kitchen. Can I come back? Ryan's voice stopped her. Tomorrow or whenever you're working? Charlotte looked back. This is a public restaurant. You can come whenever you want. That's not what I'm asking. She knew what he was asking. Whether she'd serve him again. Whether she'd give him more opportunities to prove he'd changed. Whether she'd let him orbit her life long enough to demonstrate sincerity. One meal at a time, Ryan. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. You want to prove you're different? Show me. Don't tell me. She walked away before he could respond. In the kitchen, Marcus appeared beside her. Well, he ordered. No modifications. Charlotte began plating salads for table 3. Said he trusts my judgment. That's progress. That's performance, Charlotte corrected. Real change takes longer than a week. Longer than a viral video and some guilt. Marcus smiled slightly. You're being careful, smart. I'm being realistic. She picked up the plates. Men like Ryan Blackwell don't change because of one conversation. They change when staying the same becomes more painful than growing. If he's serious, he'll prove it over time. If he's not, I'll know soon enough. She delivered the salads. Checked on her other tables. Brought Ryan his meal. Perfectly grilled sole, asparagus tips. A glass of white burgundy that complemented the fish beautifully. He didn't complain. Didn't critique. Just thanked her quietly and ate in silence, watching the lake. When he left, he placed $500 on the table. Enough to cover the meal 3 times over. Charlotte stared at the bills. Part of her wanted to refuse. To prove she couldn't be bought with generous tips and reformed behavior. But the pragmatic part, the part saving for grad school, paying rent, managing student loans, won out. She pocketed the money and felt complicated about it. Ryan came back the next day, and the day after that, not for dinner, not making a scene, just lunch, same table, same quiet presence. He ordered different things. Trusted her recommendations, tipped well but not excessively, spoke politely to every staff member. Never demanded, never complained, and slowly Charlotte began to wonder if maybe he was serious. On Friday, 2 weeks after their confrontation, he did something unexpected. Instead of sitting down, he approached the host stand carrying a large box. Charlotte was nearby, setting up her section. She watched as he handed the box to Marcus. What's this? Marcus asked. Books, Ryan replied. For your staff. I noticed several people mentioned being in school, saving for education. These are business textbooks, marketing, finance, management, whatever might help. Marcus looked stunned. Mr. Blackwell, you didn't have to. I know. That's why I wanted to. Ryan glanced toward Charlotte, not expectantly, just acknowledgement. Then he turned to leave. You're not staying for lunch? Marcus called after him. Ryan paused, looked back. I have meetings. Just wanted to drop those off. He left before anyone could thank him properly. Charlotte stood frozen, watching through the window as he walked to his car. This wasn't performance? No cameras. No audience. No one to impress. Just a gesture. Quiet, thoughtful, genuine. And for the first time since their confrontation, Charlotte felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but possibility. Marcus appeared beside her, holding the box. Well, that's interesting. Charlotte took one of the books. Marketing Strategy and Competitive Positioning. Current edition, expensive. Yeah, she said quietly. It is. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Charlotte agreed to coffee. Not a date. She'd been clear about that. Ryan had asked, tentatively, almost nervously, if she'd be willing to talk outside the restaurant. Away from the performance of service and customer. Just 2 people. Charlotte had hesitated, then said yes. With conditions, public place, afternoon, 1 hour maximum. And if I decide to leave early, you don't follow. Ryan had agreed immediately. Wherever you're comfortable. Whenever works for you. They met at a small cafe near the waterfront. Not trendy. Not expensive, just normal. The kind of place Ryan probably never visited. He arrived first. Ordered nothing. Just sat by the window, hands folded. Looking uncertain in a way Charlotte had never seen before. She arrived exactly on time. Sat across from him. Waited. Thank you for coming, Ryan began. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Charlotte's honesty was characteristic. Part of me thinks this is a mistake. That you're either performing remorse or you'll revert to who you were the moment it's convenient. That's fair. He didn't argue. Didn't defend, just accepted. I'd think the same thing. So why am I here? Charlotte asked. What do you actually want, Ryan? He took a breath. Let it out slowly. I want to understand how I became the person in that video. The person who thought treating you that way was acceptable. And I want to know if there's a version of myself worth salvaging. Charlotte studied him. That's not something I can answer for you. I know. But you saw something. That day, you looked at me and saw through everything I'd built. The money, the reputation, the armor. And you saw what was underneath. Something broken. Something that had everything except a reason to deserve it. He repeated her words back to her. Not mockingly. With the weight of someone who'd been carrying them ever since. And I keep wondering, Ryan continued, his voice quieter now, if the person you saw, if there's something there worth fixing, or if I'm just irredeemable. The vulnerability in his expression was startling. This wasn't the arrogant billionaire from Table 7. This was someone genuinely lost, seeking direction from a woman he'd wronged. Charlotte leaned back. Let silence settle between them. You're not irredeemable, she said finally. But redemption isn't something you find by asking nicely. It's something you build, day by day, choice by choice. When no one's watching and there's nothing to gain from it, like bringing books to restaurant staff, like bringing books when you could have just sent them anonymously, when you could have taken credit publicly but didn't. Charlotte paused. That was good. Actually good, not performative. Ryan's face shifted. Something like relief. So you noticed. I notice a lot of things, Ryan, including the fact that you've come to the restaurant 12 times in 3 weeks. That you're polite to everyone now, not just me. That you tip the busboys and thank the hosts and learn people's names. She tilted her head. What I don't know is why. Why I'm changing. Why you're working so hard to change for people you'll probably never see again after this novelty wears off. The question landed hard. Charlotte saw it in the way Ryan's expression tightened, the way his hands gripped the table edge. Because I'm tired, he admitted. Tired of being the villain. Tired of justifying cruelty as strength. Tired of being alone in a room full of people who only tolerate me because of my money. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. I'm 39 years old, Charlotte. I've built an empire. I have more wealth than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And I have exactly 0 people who would miss me if I disappeared. Not friends, not family, just employees and acquaintances and people who smile while hoping I'll sign their paychecks. Charlotte felt something unexpected. Not pity this time, empathy. That sounds lonely, she said quietly. It is. Ryan met her eyes. And I did it to myself. Every bridge I burned, every person I dismissed, every moment I chose ego over connection. I built this isolation brick by brick. And I didn't realize how empty it was until you held up a mirror and made me see it. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable? Contemplative. So what do you want from me? Charlotte asked again. Really? Ryan considered. When he answered, his voice was steady. Honest. I want to know what it's like to be seen by someone who doesn't want anything from me, who isn't impressed by wealth or reputation or power. Someone who sees me, just me, and decides whether that's worth knowing. Charlotte felt her defenses waver. Not collapse, just soften. That's a lot to ask from someone you humiliated publicly. I know. Ryan nodded. And if you say no, I'll understand. I'll stop coming to the restaurant. I'll leave you alone. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set. But, Charlotte heard the unspoken word, but I hope you'll say yes. Charlotte didn't answer immediately. She looked at Ryan, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected to find. Not redemption, not transformation, but willingness. The raw, uncomfortable willingness to be wrong, to be vulnerable, to be seen without the armor he'd worn his entire life. One coffee, she said finally. One conversation. That's what I'm saying yes to. Nothing more. Ryan's relief was visible. That's more than I deserve. It is, Charlotte agreed. So don't waste it trying to impress me. Don't perform. Don't try to prove anything. Just be honest. Can you do that? I can try. Trying isn't good enough, Ryan. Either you're honest or we're done before we start. The firmness in her voice seemed to ground him. He nodded. Okay, honest, what do you want to know? Charlotte considered. There were 1,000 questions she could ask. About his childhood, his wealth, his pattern of cruelty. But only one felt important. Why did you knock over that wine glass? Ryan flinched. You want to revisit that? I want to understand it. Because everything that's happened since, this entire conversation we're having, started with you deliberately creating a problem to humiliate me. So yes, I want to know why. Silence settled over their table. Ryan's jaw worked like he was chewing on words too difficult to swallow. Because you were competent, he said finally. Because you were professional and kind and good at your job. And that meant I couldn't find a legitimate reason to feel superior to you. So I manufactured one. Charlotte felt anger flicker. Old anger, familiar. You needed to feel superior that badly? Yes. The admission came out raw, undefended. My entire life is built on feeling superior. On being the smartest person in the room, the richest, the most successful. And when I can't claim that naturally, I tear other people down until I'm standing on their shoulders. That's pathetic. I know. Ryan didn't look away. It's pathetic and cruel and exactly what my father feared I'd become. He used to say that cruelty was just fear wearing a crown. I didn't understand what he meant until you said those 10 words. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. And now? Now I understand that I've been afraid my entire life. Afraid of being ordinary. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid that if I strip away the money and the power and the performance, there's nothing underneath worth remembering. The vulnerability in his voice was almost painful to hear. Charlotte felt her anger complicate, soften into something harder to name. There's something underneath, she said quietly. I wouldn't be sitting here if there wasn't. Ryan looked up sharply. Hope flickered across his features. Fragile, uncertain. But, Charlotte continued, her tone firm, whatever's underneath has been buried under years of learned cruelty. And digging it out? That's hard work, Ryan, uncomfortable work. The kind that doesn't happen over coffee or through grand gestures. I know. Do you? Charlotte challenged. Because the moment this gets difficult, the moment being better stops feeling good and starts feeling hard, that's when people revert. That's when old patterns resurface. And I won't be collateral damage in your journey of self-discovery. Ryan absorbed her words. Let them settle. What would convince you I'm serious? Time, consistency, showing up even when it's inconvenient. Treating people well when there's nothing to gain from it. Choosing growth over comfort every single day. Charlotte paused. Can you do that? I don't know, Ryan admitted. But I want to try. Wanting isn't enough. Then what is? Charlotte considered. The cafe hummed around them. Conversations, coffee machines, the gentle clink of cups. Normal life continuing while they negotiated something fragile and unprecedented. Commitment, she said finally. Not to me, to yourself. To becoming someone you can respect when you're alone. Someone who doesn't need to diminish others to feel significant. Ryan nodded slowly. And if I do that, if I actually do the work, would you consider getting to know who I become? Charlotte felt something shift in her chest. Not walls coming down, but a door unlocking. Not opened yet, just available. Ask me again in 3 months, she said. If you're still showing up, still doing the work, still choosing to be better when no one's watching, then we'll talk. 3 months, 3 months. And Ryan? She held his gaze. I'll know if you're performing. I'll know if you're just managing an image. So don't waste your time or mine with half measures. I won't. The certainty in his voice surprised her. Thank you, Charlotte. For seeing something worth saving, she stood, gathered her jacket. I didn't say I saw something worth saving. I said I saw something underneath. What it's worth. That's up to you to prove. Ryan stood as well, extended his hand, formal, respectful. Charlotte looked at it, then took it. Brief, professional, but the contact lingered longer than necessary. Just a moment. Just enough to acknowledge that something had shifted between them, something neither could name yet. She left the cafe without looking back, but she felt his eyes following her. Felt the weight of possibility settling over both of them like unexpected snow. 3 months passed. Ryan showed up, not just at the restaurant. To himself, he enrolled in a carpentry class, the kind his father had mastered decades ago. His hands blistered. His projects were clumsy at first, but he learned what it meant to build something real, something that existed because of effort, not acquisition. He volunteered at a community kitchen, served meals, washed dishes, listened to stories from people who had nothing but still found reasons to smile, relearned humility one plate at a time. He changed how he ran his business. Better wages, better conditions, meetings where he listened instead of dominated. Slowly, cautiously, his employees stopped fearing him, started respecting him. Charlotte watched from a distance. She saw the social media posts, not from Ryan, but from others. Photos of him at the community kitchen, testimonials from employees about improved workplace culture, small signs of genuine change. She didn't reach out. The 3 months had been her condition, and she meant it. On the 91st day, Ryan returned to Rousseau, same table, same window. But when Charlotte approached, he stood. 3 months, he said simply. 3 months, she confirmed. I did the work. Not perfectly. Not without setbacks, but I did it, he paused. I'm still doing it. Every day, Charlotte studied him. The arrogance was gone. The performance was gone. What remained was someone quieter, more grounded, more real. I can see that, she said softly, so. Ryan's voice held uncertainty. Hope. Will you have dinner with me? Not here, somewhere without history, just 2 people getting to know each other? Charlotte felt her answer before she spoke it. Felt it in the way her heart steadied instead of raced, in the way possibility felt less like risk and more like opportunity. Yes, she said. I'll have dinner with you. Ryan's smile was genuine, unguarded. Thank you. But Ryan, she held his gaze. This doesn't erase what happened. You still humiliated me. You still have work to do. This is a beginning, not an ending. I know, he nodded. And I'm grateful for the chance to begin. 6 months later, they sat together at that same window. Not as server and customer, as equals, as partners discovering what it meant to build something together. Ryan had learned that wealth meant nothing without character. That power without compassion was just cruelty with a better wardrobe. Charlotte had learned that people could change, that grace offered cautiously could transform both the giver and receiver. They weren't perfect. They stumbled, argued, challenged each other constantly, but they were real and honest. And building something worth deserving. You know what I'm grateful for? Ryan asked, watching sunlight dance across the lake. What? That you saw me. Really saw me. When I deserved at least, Charlotte smiled. Took his hand. You know what I'm grateful for? What? That you proved me right. That there was something underneath worth finding. He kissed her knuckles. Gentle, reverent, and in that moment, in that restaurant where everything had shattered and rebuilt, they both understood that transformation wasn't a destination. It was a choice. Made daily, made honestly, made together. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently about second chances and transformation, let me know in the comments below. What did you think of Charlotte's courage? Of Ryan's journey? Have you ever witnessed someone truly change? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that challenge us to be better. Hit that like button if you believe in the power of honest words and second chances. And turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might just change how you see the world. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. So comment, share, and let's build a community that believes growth is always possible. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.